Hi, I'm just setting up. I'm going to get Dr. Catherine Dukes on here, so I'm just waiting for her to follow me, and then I will get her to join. Hope you all had a great weekend. Um, it's been raining here in New York, which just sucks. All right. I'm just waiting for Kat. She should be connected. Waiting, connecting. This is every time this works, I feel like it's a miracle. Ah, it's Kat. The same as that. Kat, can I hear you? Why do I not hear
Hi.
you? Oh, I do hear you. Oh my God. Every time technology works for me, I'm like, it's a miracle. It's like a short miracle. Anyway, I'm so happy you're here, Kat. I'm just gonna give a minute or two for people to like get on,
Yeah,
and then we will. Did you have a good weekend? Is it pouring in Delaware like it's pouring in New York?
yeah, it was. It was completely pouring in Delaware all day long until the afternoon, but now it seems to be just fine.
And
But
tomorrow,
yeah,
because it's disgusting in New York, and I think it's supposed to be disgusting tomorrow as well.
I didn't even check tomorrow at all.
I
I
know it's not worth looking into tomorrow because we only have today.
Because like being mindful and in the present.
Exactly,
Yes, absolutely.
exactly. Are your kids all sleeping? All right.
No, they better be in their beds.
Okay.
That is my hope that they're actually in their beds because I don't think they're sleeping. But yeah, I really hope they're in their beds right now.
Okay, well, if we see little pajama feet coming towards us or whatever. I saw a parent in the park this morning. I took a walk early in the morning to the playground, and I saw a father with his son, and his son was in his feety pajamas, and they were going down the slide. It was like a 2 or 3 year old, and I was like, oh, I want to come to the park in my feety pajamas, you know?
No, they all the parks in our neighborhood, they put caution tape around and they closed down all the parks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the people are very good. They're keeping totally distant, and
Hmm.
but there are people in the parks. Okay, so I think we're going to start. It's 8:31, 8:32, but I think I'm just going to start by just saying, I can give you a formal intro to Kat, but I met Kat. I don't know how many years ago we were doing a degree. Do you know how many years ago it was when we
I
were
think it must have, did you start in 2004?
something like that? I don't know.
Yeah,
So
it's been 16 years.
it's insane, right? So I
Hmm.
was doing my PhD in the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality. You were doing an EDD. What were you doing there?
Yep, PhD,
You were
also
doing a PhD
PhD.
also. And I met Kat, and the truth is we loved each other, but we lost contact for a couple of years. And
Yeah.
Kat was one. She was definitely the party girl. And if you're at the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality and you're the party girl, saying a lot. I was like I was like the conservative old lady, totally. Anyway, so, but we connected. It was really fun. And then we kind of lost touch for a while. Then Kat took over Planned Parenthood's education department in Delaware. So she oversaw all of Delaware's education department and Planned Parenthood. And she
Yes.
really is, I think of her as like the expert in sex education. And I will just share that I was at a lecture at a conference and that Kat gave, and she said, I love this. I use this quote all the time. Anybody who hears me has probably heard me use this quote, which is a kid's learning to drive, as kids learning to have sex from porn is like learning how to drive from watching The Fast and the Furious. That's right. That's your line, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great line. Use it all the time. Anyway, then Kat left and she's starting a private practice. And when I tried to think about who could talk comfortably and rationally and appropriately about talking to kids about COVID-19 and other really difficult topics, Kat was my first choice. So I am so excited that you're here with me live. She moved to Instagram in order to do this, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we did. So we could do it together. And also, I think we moved it from 8 to 8:30 so I could make sure that my kids were in bed. And like you asked earlier, I don't think there's any way that they sleep right now. So they may be coming down and I may be like making some hand movements, like, like that. So that might have to happen. But we'll see. Hopefully they'll stay in bed. It's only going to be 15 minutes. So we'll see.
Great. Okay, so we want to start by sort of giving us a little introduction of how you would approach this, and yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. So the title of our talk, it was a little bit long that I came up with Bathsheba, but it's talking to kids. Some serious things are happening around our whole world has changed, and part of my area of expertise is talking to kids and youth, adolescents, and people about sexuality, which across the lifespan is truly taboo in general already. We don't know what we're doing. And now we're encountering this whole global shift in how we're living and how we're communicating. And it's also a very sensitive issue. It's not just a shift, but it's scary. It's a little uncomfortable. We're not sure what we're doing. And so, Batsheva's idea around, that there was overlap between talking about COVID and also talking about sexuality, I really was like, the more we talked about it, was just so dead on. And so what I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight is sort of how to talk about COVID from the general perspective of how to talk about difficult and sensitive subjects. And then I'm going to talk about how to be an askable parent or caregiver around tough things that are, not just things that are maybe difficult for young people to talk about, but difficult for you to manage. How do you address it when they come to you, or how do you initiate the conversation?
Right, because parents are always so nervous about them being anxious. And I feel like that's a big piece of this.
It is. It's a really huge piece of it. You're absolutely right. And then I'm going to go through one of my favorite things to teach, which is a really quick lesson about, I'm going to teach you the sex question protocol, which is how to answer any sex question, but it really applies to how to answer any sensitive question. And so this is going to be a really great skill to answer those really tough COVID questions as well. Because when kids ask us sensitive sexuality questions, we're not expected to always have all the answers right away. And then if we're answering questions about coronavirus and COVID, we don't always know all the answers, and that's going to be okay too. But we want to set a stage to be a really askable parent. So, Batsheva, you already gave the intro of how we know each other and a little bit about my experience. So, when you're thinking about, going into content, when you're thinking about talking to kids about coronavirus, COVID, sensitive topics, one thing you want to think about first is like, what do you want them to get? What do you want them to get out of the conversation? So you have to think about like, what's the goal? If you don't do that, it's kind of like getting in the car to like go to your aunt's house who just moved to a new house, but not putting in the address and just saying, oh, we'll get there when we get there. So I want you to think about like, hey, what's the goal first? At the end of that conversation, like you're going to want to think like, hey, at the end of this conversation, what do I want my kids to know? What are they talking about? And how do I want them to feel about how the conversation went? You want to think about your own usual emotional reactions. Are you a panicky person? Are you like me and you can talk really quickly if you really want to? You want to slow that down. Are you feeling nervous? So you want to make sure you don't like put that on your kids. Think about like, what's that goal? How do you get to that new aunt's house? You got to put the address in the GPS first. So thinking about COVID, I was thinking about this today. What might you want kids to know about COVID? Well, first of all, you want them to know just some basic information. We'll get to that later. You want them to be assured, because in light of everything that's happening to us with how we're changing, change is hard, even when people are like enjoying being in their house more and some of us are having a more relaxed experience of life in a way, being forced to stay at home, but some people are not. So, but you want them to have an assurance that you'll take care of them, that you're going to keep them safe. And then also you're going to want to actually teach them some skills like hand washing. I talked to one parent who I think is watching right now, Mark and Lynn, last night, and they were talking about wanting to get their young person just to wash their hands for at least 20 seconds. I said, we've got the opposite problem over here. My 5-year-old is counting to 100 while like letting the water run furiously and like letting the water run for like a whole 100 of slow seconds, right?
Do you feel do you feel like that's her anxiety, Kat? Do you think that's her anxiety, or she's just having fun with the water?
I think she's having fun, and I think she's so excited to know how to count to 100. And so like my partner came into the bathroom, he's like, there's like bubbles like up above the sink like this, right? And I was like, I feel like it's overkill, but I feel like I'm not going to correct it right now because I feel like there's sort of a good thing happening, So you want them to have some basic information, some assurance, and some skills. And Batsheva, I just want to check in with you. Give me that. So what's the hard ending time for us?
There's no hard ending. People can leave whenever they want. I like to go to 8:15, 8:20. People can leave. It'll be video, but very, relaxed. So take your time, Kat. I'm the fast talker. We could have a race to see who talks faster, but that would not be good.
Okay, hold on just a second. I need you to go back to bed.
Okay.
Honey, I'm like talking live on the internet right now. I desperately, you know what? Just go back to bed. I'll be there in like 15 minutes. I promise you. Please. Just please. Thank you so much.
I love it. I totally love it. That's great.
I'm like, please.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Okay. I almost bragged. Okay.
You know,
So
and I want to just point out that one of the things when I talk to Orthodox Jewish people about talking to their kids about sex, or religious people in general, I will often say your opportunity to talk about sex lets them communicate your values, which is not totally different than what you're saying. Like, where do I want to get at the end of this conversation?
yes, yes. And also when talking with families about that, I really like to validate with families that, you know, it is your wonderful job and gift to be able to share those values with your kid. Sometimes we do a disservice when we confuse facts with values. Values are really important, but it's also important that you don't conflate values as facts. And as I always say to people, like, values, person to person, are neither good nor bad. They're just yours. Someone's values are not better or worse than yours. They're just different. So values are neither good and bad. They're yours and they're dear to you and they're important. So yes, as family members, to share not just facts, but also share those values is so important. So in going into values, that's a really nice segue, because also around values, how do you want to be an askable parent? In order to have these conversations and to answer questions, you actually have to be someone that your kid wants to approach. So if sex questions or COVID questions or anything like that freak you the hell out and make you go up 2 octaves, like, where the heck did you hear that? And why are you asking that? And you shouldn't ask that at all. Well, then you're going to have a kid that then Googles 69 or blowjob on the Google instead of asking you. And so it's like, what experience do you want them to have? If you want to be an askable parent, that means that you have to create the environment and the response so that they want to come back to you. Think about what reactions you've had from your parents in the past. What reactions have you given your kids when you get surprising and shocking questions?
I had one. I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. I had one mother who said to me that she felt terrible because her kids started asking questions. She burst into tears, and she didn't really want to do that because she felt like she was putting her anxiety and her sadness on the child. And so, yeah, I just thought about that as you were talking.
And that can happen. And you know what's so lovely about that is then you can actually also address it. Like if you get nervous or you get uncertain or you get upset, you can be like, you know what? I'm really glad that we're talking about this. Sometimes the subject matter makes me nervous, or sometimes it makes me upset, but I still really want to push through and talk to you about it. Or I might need a little break, but I love that you came to talk to me and I still want to talk to you about it. So to really just let them know that's not a barrier, that's just feelings, you know, that we all get to feel our feelings, but that it's still important and you still want to connect. You can still use those words, you know? So I think that's such an incredible opportunity too, as surprising and difficult as it can be for that mom when that kind of happens. So being an askable parent is like, you take a moment and you make sure that you know what your nonverbal usual reactions are, and you know what your face does when you're stressed out or when you're surprised or you're pissed off, and you kind of like, you relax your face. And if you get agitated, just you relax your arms. I used to work, one of my first jobs was working with sexual assault victims and rape victims. And I found that it was my job as a support person to sometimes hear some of the worst details of someone's life on that day. And I realized what was happening to me is my body would close up when I would hear the details like this, and my face would get very pained. And I thank goodness I realized that. And then I realized that in order to keep my body posture and my nonverbal communication open, I needed to relax my shoulders, and I used the armrests of the seat to make sure my body posture stayed open to that person that I was trying to support. And so you have to take kind of a little body scan of what your reactions are. But anyway, after you try to learn and practice to be a little bit more relaxed about that, I'm going to go through just a how to answer tough questions protocol. You can apply it to COVID, or you can apply it to sex or anything sensitive. Really, you can. So when a kid comes to you with a sensitive question, sometimes that you weren't expecting, like, are we going to die? Or like I said before, what's a blowjob? I mean, those are all really important questions, right? It's important to take a breath, like, and just validate the question. Like, wow, that's a really good question. If you can train yourself to stop and say, that's a really good question. If you can really train yourself, it allows you a moment to validate the asker, because they were probably nervous by asking, to validate for that person that you were a great person to go to with this question. And it also, this is the most important thing for me, it gives you time to stall. You're like, huh.
Wasn't expecting that one so
That's
fast.
a really good question.
Right.
And then you think, and then you get a moment to go, you can just say, that's a really good question. And then you get that time to go, how the hell do I answer this? Right? So you go, wow, that's a really good question. So the next thing you do is, if you can answer the question simply, and this is a great way to be developmentally appropriate, you answer the question as simply as possible and then ask if there are more questions, right? So, you know,
gosh, am I going to die? Let's say a kid comes to me and says, Mom, I'm hearing about this. Am I going to die? Are you going to die? I think that's more likely. Are you going to, or am I going to die? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you go, wow, gosh, wow. That's a really good question. And then you can answer it really simply. And you can say, you know what? Most kids and most adults are just like, we're going to be fine. And actually, if we do get the virus, it's more likely that we're going to get a really mild case. However, here's the things that we're already doing to keep ourselves safe and away from the virus. So like assurance and basic information. So this step is also a place where if you're confused about where the information's coming from or confused about the question, you go, hey, can you tell me more about that question and what you mean by that? But if you don't need to know that information, you just answer very, very simply. And then you ask, do you have any other questions about that? So that's step 2. So step 1 is good question. Wow, that's a really good question. Wow, you really ask great questions. Oh, I'm glad you asked that. So that's validate the asker. Second part is just answer really simply or ask clarifying questions. Sort of a step 3 is, but it's more like a step 2. If you're not 100% sure of the information you're about to give, it's really important for us as adults to model that we don't know everything. So if you are not 100% sure of the information you're about to give, it's really important that you just stop and say, wow, good question. I'm really not sure. I don't know. But I can find out. Like, let's find out together. Let's go do that. If you're stuck at home, so I can pretty much guarantee right now you can probably do it together, right? Or if you're not sure about what the information will be on the screen, you can go look that up and be like, hey, I don't know, but I can find out. And, let's talk again in like half an hour or tomorrow morning when you get up. And, we'll talk more about that. So I don't know, but I can find out is so important because it prevents us from being 90% sure about something and then giving misinformation. And it also reinforces a lifelong commitment to learning. And that's what I love about saying, I don't know, but I can find out, is it actually has these 2 benefits.
Right. I think sometimes parents are afraid that somehow if they say, I don't know, that will freak the kid out also, but it doesn't, right?
No, it's such a good example. It's like, I read a couple articles like years ago about how like there was, it's a wrong word for the term now, epidemic, but anyway, there was a trend of like parents just answering in bullshitty ways any question about how does a steam engine work, and parents were just answering as if they knew, and it was just not, giving untruths just because they wanted to appear like a competent expert to your kid. But I love the idea of committing to lifelong learning and like, hey, let's learn together, right? So I don't know, but I can find out.
And I think that's really important with COVID also, because I feel like we don't have all the answers, right? If they say to you, well, how does the disease work? Or why are certain people more affected than others? You can say, I don't actually know. We don't really know, but let's find it out together. Exactly.
And some of the answers, so those are for that protocol, those first 3 things are really like for fact-based questions, right? If it's a values-based question, like, is it okay to start, dating at 14 or 15, or is it okay to have sex before you're married or something like that, then you might answer it a different way. You could also use this protocol for answering different kind of COVID questions too, and I'll show you what that's like. So let's say it's not a fact-based question that you can look up on CDC or WHO that we're all going to daily right now. Let's say it's a values-based question. Let's say it's like, hey, is it okay to have sex before I get married, right? Very values-based, very maybe religious or family-based. And the first thing you say, okay, what is it, everybody at home? What's the first thing you say? It's a good question. That's a really good question. And then you go, wow, that's a really good question. Well, you know what? For some people, they choose to have sex at a time that's right for them, where they're ready in their relationships or in their lives. For other people, they choose to wait until they're married because that's in line with their faith or in line with their family values, and that's what's right for them. for you, it's, you know, it's a time that's right for you. And then this is where you can, this is Batsheva, where you can add those values. In our family, you know, what I was taught and what I value is da, 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 da.
And here's why. Right,
And
exactly.
why? And here's why, right? Yeah, that's that great time. And then you could say, you know, do you have any other questions about that? So tonight, to talk to my kids more about COVID, I found a comic online around COVID, like kind of like a comic book, online comic book that I read to all three of my kids tonight. My kids, I have boy, girl, 8-year-old twins, and I have a 5-year-old girl.
Lucky you. But I want to just tell people she has the cutest kid. It's seriously the cutest kids ever. I'm seriously the cutest kids. Anyway, go ahead.
I hear them talking right now upstairs. They should have been asleep now about 20 minutes ago at least. But I also hear them walking around upstairs too. So they know I'm like indisposed right now. So it's going to be something coming after this. But anyway, yeah. So in answering the question, so after reading the comic book to my kids, this online comic book I did post to my Facebook page, I asked my kids like, hey, what questions do you have? And I do this on purpose. I don't say, do you have any questions? 2 of my kids are now looking at me.
Ask them, what questions do they have? I think that's absolutely brilliant, Kat. What questions do you have?
I desperately need you to go upstairs. Now all 3 are downstairs. I desperately, okay, come and say hi. Just come and say hi for just a second. Don't show the sign. Just come and say hi. And then you have to go upstairs. This is one twin. This is a 5-year-old. And this is another twin.
Hi, guys.
I desperately need
guys.
just.
Your mom is just telling us how to ask kids if they have questions. She will be back in a minute. I promise. We're signing off.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. I need like, hey, 3 minutes. In 3 minutes. Just give me. I can't just, I need
What's
you
that
right now, please.
What's
Please.
the circle?
That's a light. Can you go upstairs now, please?
Sorry.
I tried.
It's fine. It's great.
It's okay, honey. We'll talk in just a minute. Okay, so anyway, just to finish up. So after reading the comic book, I said, you know, what questions do you have? And instead of saying, do you have any questions? Because it's easy to answer that in a closed way of yes or no. I say, what questions do you have? Because I really want to validate for my kids and audiences that questions at this point are normal, and I can't predict what if I covered everything that you needed to know.
Can I just tell you, I have this thing in my office when I'm taking a sexual history. I never say, do you masturbate or did you masturbate? I always say, what age did you start masturbating? It's sort of the same thing, right? You just, yes, I love that. What questions do you have? Let's come up with some questions together even, you know?
Yeah. So Corin, my son, he said, what if this lasts for years and years and closes all the schools? Actually, he said kills the schools. Closes all the schools and we all have to homeschool forever. And I was like, wow, that's a really good question.
And then he said, I will kill myself.
I said, I don't really know. And I said, you know what? That's a really good question. And I said, we don't have all the answers. I just answered really simply. We don't have all the answers right now.
But it doesn't look likely that that's going to happen.
Yeah, it looks like, you know, this will take a few weeks to a few months. And we'll find out more information every day. But what I can tell you is that we'll stay connected. I can tell you that you're still going to be, you know, doing really well in school. And, you know, we're all committed to your learning and having a great experience with your school and with your schooling. So, and then who else asked? Oh yeah. And then my other twin asked, she's really into like achievement and checklists. And she's like, will this still delay some of the deadlines for me getting in the platinum level for accelerated reader? She's like, are they going to delay some of the deadlines so that I can still get into platinum? And I was like, wow, that's a great question. And I said, you know what? I really don't know that, but we can find out on Monday when we talk to your teacher for morning meeting. So that's like the question protocol. Great question. Answer simply or say, I don't know, but I can find out. And then, or if it's values question for some, it's this way. For others, it's this way. For you, it's this way. And then are there any other questions you have about that?
I love that.
That's it.
I love that, Kat. It's simple, it's direct, it's perfect. And I think it will make people much more confident, both in terms of talking about COVID and talking about sex. And so I thank you so much. Will you come back and talk with me? We can just talk more about talking to teenagers about sex. Now that we got all the technology going, we can do this as a regular thing.
We can do it. I know. I'm like, it worked.
I know. It's so exciting. All right. Yeah. Good night, everybody. Good night, Kat. And thanks everybody who's here. And feel free to, you know, private message me. I know people are uncomfortable with like emailing, you know, when people can see names. So just private message me if you have questions. But thanks a lot, Kat, and have a good night.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.